Hi, I'm Dave Johnson from the Employee Assistance Program, and today we're here to talk with Dr. Mark O'Shaughnessy from Cardiology about the mind-body connection and some of the health benefits of mindfulness and heart care. So I'd like to just kind of open up some of your thoughts about what does that actually mean? What does it mean that the mind and the body is connected? Or for that matter, how does it get disconnected?
Absolutely, your state of well-being, your mind controls your body. We can measure that by biofeedback mechanisms, looking at your heart rate, looking at blood pressure. I can measure it using imaging techniques as well. And so there is a true connection between the mind and the body and having overall well-being, not just physical well-being. 10 years ago, that's all we talked about was your physical presence. Now we talk about this mind-body connection that is a real, tangible thing that again is measurable, which with the newer techniques we weren't able to do 10 years ago.
There's times when I'm in my thinking and overthinking mind and I'm just not present. And so my body might be here, but my mind is somewhere else. And so in that instance, I might go for a second dessert before I ate the first one, or before I knew that I was eating the first one. Or I might be present to my wife or to my children or my grandchildren in the sense of my body's there, but my mind is somewhere else. And so this notion of the mind-body connection and the mind-body disconnection is important for me to be able to notice where I am. Am I present when I need to be present? What's some of your thoughts regarding the body keeps score?
You talked about food, and that's a classic example of when we're not in the present. Our satiety mechanisms, when we fill our stomachs, it takes a period of time before the chemical gets to our brain and says, I'm full, stop eating. We've all had the experience at Thanksgiving dinner where we just pound the food and then an hour later we go, why did I eat that much? So when you're in the mind, when you're present at the time and you slow down and you actually enjoy your food, you eat less, you're satisfied sooner. And so from a heart standpoint, that's critically important because obesity is a huge problem, worldwide. And so if we were to be more present with that, and so I think that those connections, it's not a short-term thing, it's a long-term thing. But heart disease is a long-term problem. It's not something that happens in a week or a month. It happens over decades. So it's decades of not being in the present, not being mindful that create the problem.
I see mindfulness as a place that I can become better at sleeping, my sleep hygiene, better at being able to eat healthy, to stay motivated for health-seeking kinds of behaviors. But with stress, or should I say traumatic stress, the folks that I've seen in therapy, particularly when they've had a horrific situation where they've not been able to get out of their thought process. They've had recurring triggers. I've seen them have all kinds of physiological issues connected to their immune system, connected to their musculoskeletal system, neck pain, back pain. And I think about the words, the body keeps the score as being, housed within us. And so as a mindfulness practitioner, we teach people who have been traumatized to increase their awareness of their body. And we do that by introducing anchors, such as, I frequently will use the cup of tea or coffee to ground me in a sensory awareness. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I touch? What do I taste? What do I smell? To be present. But I also know that my body keeps score within my chest, that when I have a heart-wrenching situation, a heart-breaking situation, that it's housed within me, that I can feel it. It's very tangible. And I don't think that's metaphoric, that it's housed there. And so what are some of your thoughts regarding how to then, with that wisdom that your body's keeping score, how to move it?
The classic example of where the body keeps score is a thing called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome, stress-induced cardiomyopathy. A person has a traumatic event, house fire, divorce, death of a family member, and they have what appears to be a huge heart attack involving the entire front and tip of their heart. It's called takotsubo because it's actually a Japanese fishing vessel. It's a jar that gets octopus in there and they can't get out. But it's shaped like it's got a big bell on the bottom of it and then a kind of narrow neck on it. And so the heart looks like that. It looks like a person's had a big heart attack. Their blood proteins go up to suggest they have a heart attack. We do a heart catheterization, their arteries are normal. And it was related to the stress. And so that's an acute stress. And so that's the classic example where the body's truly keeping score. The corollary is that if you can get to that point and have true heart muscle injury, if we're trying to be in the present, we're trying to be mindful, we're listening to our body, we can prevent, not necessarily prevent an acute traumatic event, but the chronic stresses that do have an impact on us, we absolutely can prevent heart disease. We talk about know your numbers, the physical piece, know your cholesterol, know your sugar level, know your blood pressure, don't smoke, those kinds of things. The mental piece of it is just or more important than the physical piece.
So often I can go on autopilot. I can go on autopilot with my job. I can go on autopilot with my driving. I can be going through the motions, but not actually being wise, perhaps, with my motions. What's some of your thoughts regarding this notion of autopilot and rushing from point A to point B and learning to push maybe a pause button?
We're in a society that pushes us to go faster and faster and faster, and we're being programmed by the TV. Our attention spans are a nanosecond now. I mean, there's research data on how long a person will actually sit and read something because of the way the TV is conditioning you to have these short segments. And so you know that there's science behind putting things online because people aren't going to spend that amount of time. We've got to learn to take those pauses because we're being pushed unconsciously, to a certain extent, by society to go faster and do things quicker and more efficiently, when in reality, if we were to slow down, it's really about our health. And so it has to be intentional. That's the most important thing. I don't think we can say, okay, I'm going to start being mindful today and not be intentional about, okay, how am I going to do that? How am I going to get training to do that? The problem is, once we have a disease process, now we're treating an illness rather than preventing an illness. And so I have my own techniques for mindfulness, but I don't think they work for everybody. But I think that people have to be intentional about, let's get myself off of autopilot. First off, recognizing that we all are on autopilot to a certain extent, and recognizing when I start to spin on that autopilot, I got to hit the pause button, step back and say, let's redefine what I want to do here.
As a therapist, I help folks to breathe. I help folks to have a gratitude journal. I encourage them to go into yoga or Tai Chi or some type of meditative practice if they come out of a religious tradition, to navigate back to that tradition and its pause buttons, you know. And by pause, I mean coming out of that thinking and overthinking mind and being present to what is. And that's very sensory. But it's also that interoception, noticing that organ within. You know, am I hungry? Or am I tired? And the pause button helps me to make that discernment. Your thoughts for the future in terms of mindfulness or recommendations that you have for folks to be able to learn more about the practice of mindfulness?
This is an important connection, and that these are the ways we're going to do that. And so we rely on our mental health care professionals to help us, educate us, because we don't have an education in that. I have an interest in it because of what I've been doing some research recently and some of my interactions with patients as well as my public safety personnel interests. So I've sought out that type of thing. I have lots and lots and lots of hobbies. Probably more than I need to have hobbies. And my brother-in-law once asked me, he said, well, why do you have all these hobbies? And I thought, well, the reason I have all those hobbies is because they're mindless to the certain extent. I'm in the moment. I don't have to think. I think all day long on my job. That's what I do. That's my job as an intellectual job. And you get tired doing that. So I find golf incredibly frustrating because it's a game of concentration. I don't want to concentrate. I want to be in the moment. And so I'm a runner. And so when I run, for me, that's a very mindful thing. I never use earbuds. I'm typically by myself when I'm running. And so for me, it's a very meditative state. We journal. Since I've had a health scare a couple years ago, we've been journaling, have a praise journal. We do that every morning. I play music. I read, which for me is calming. I garden, and I keep bees. And so all of those things I don't have to think about. I'm fascinated by the bee biology. So I'm out, with the bees. It's incredibly calming when you're playing. I say playing with the girls because all the worker bees are female. So, but it's fascinating to me, and it's relaxing to me. So those are the things that I use for my mindfulness practice.
I really appreciate you sharing the wisdom of some of your hobbies that are really mindfully based practices. Because oftentimes I think the patients that I've worked with, they're almost fearful of this thing called mindfulness. And yet, if we deconstruct it and we recognize that it's coming out of the thinking and the overthinking or the ruminative or monkey mind, that wakes us up or prevents us from going to sleep or prevents us from being present to our lives, that if we have an activity that grounds us, like your bees or like your garden or like your guitar, that it is sensory based. And because you've spent your 10,000 hours or how many hours a person takes to get grounded in a particular practice, that it becomes a way of de-stressing and healing. It's not just turning off stress, it's turning on healing. I really appreciate the time that we've had with this conversation today. I think that for me personally, to be able to hear about the mind-body connection, in particular to my own heart health and the heart health of others that I come into contact with, that this is important information. And I look forward to additional conversations around that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, absolutely.
Yeah.